Hello, thoughtful Libra. Have you ever noticed that the moments which quietly reshape a life rarely announce themselves, yet somehow leave an imprint you only understand much later? We often imagine that life's defining changes will arrive with unmistakable certainty. But what if the most important turning point is simply a moment you almost overlook because it appears so ordinary? Perhaps the real question has never been when change will happen, but whether you'll recognize it while you're living through it. Many Libras carry an unspoken belief that when something truly meaningful enters their lives, they'll simply know. They'll feel a shift they can't mistake for anything else, as though their heart has its own reliable compass. But what if that confidence deserves another look? Imagine trusting the morning light to wake you every day without ever setting an alarm. Most mornings it works, until one day the light filters through differently and the moment you've been waiting for slips quietly past while you're still asleep. What if life's most important signals aren't loud enough to hear, but subtle enough that they must be noticed instead? Some things don't arrive like thunder across the sky. They resemble the first hint of dawn reflected on a still lake, or the gentle clearing of mist from a window that has been clouded for years. They reveal themselves only to someone willing to pause long enough to truly observe. Perhaps that is where Libra's greatest challenge begins. From early in life, you may have learned that harmony often feels safer than disagreement, so you became remarkably skilled at softening sharp edges before anyone else even noticed them. Over time, this instinct can become like looking through glass lightly veiled by morning fog, clear enough to navigate the world, but never quite transparent enough to see every detail without adjustment. What feels like emotional maturity may sometimes also be a habit of smoothing away experiences before you fully understood what they mean to you. And if you've always viewed the world through that gentle filter, how would you know what complete clarity actually feels like? Maybe the opportunity you've been hoping to recognize isn't missing at all. Maybe it's already standing quietly in front of you, waiting for you to look beyond familiar interpretations and see it without immediately translating it into something more comfortable. There is another layer that is even easier to overlook. Many Libras naturally sense the emotional atmosphere around them, reading expressions, adjusting conversations, and noticing tension before anyone speaks a word. That sensitivity is a genuine strength. Yet, when so much attention is devoted to understanding everyone else's emotional weather, it becomes surprisingly easy to lose track of your own. You might recognize another person's exhaustion long before they do, while overlooking the quiet signs that you've been carrying too much yourself. Your attention has become so practiced at moving outward that it rarely pauses to ask what is happening within. And in that unnoticed space, something deeply meaningful can enter your life without fanfare, not because it lacks importance, but because your focus has been elsewhere. The experiences that truly reshape us rarely introduce themselves as extraordinary. More often they resemble an ordinary morning, a familiar cafe, a conversation that seems no different from dozens before it, or a face that blends effortlessly into the rhythm of everyday life. Their greatest disguise is their simplicity. We tend to expect transformation to arrive with unmistakable signs, while real change often slips in wearing the quiet clothes of everyday experience. So perhaps the question isn't how to predict the day everything changes. Perhaps the better question is how to become present enough to notice when something inside you responds differently than usual. The answer isn't found by collecting more theories or searching for bigger signs. It begins when you shift your attention inward with the same care you've always offered everyone else. If something in these thoughts feels unexpectedly familiar, don't dismiss that feeling too quickly. Sometimes the deepest recognition begins as nothing more than a quiet sense that an old pattern has finally revealed itself. Those moments deserve attention while they're still alive, because awareness has a way of fading when we convince ourselves we'll come back to it later. You don't need to become someone who predicts every turning point. You simply need to trust that greater clarity comes from seeing yourself more honestly, moment by moment. When your own inner mirror becomes a little clearer, you may discover that what you've been waiting to recognize has never depended on dramatic signs at all. It has been patiently waiting within the ordinary, asking only that you learn to truly see it. And while you are reflecting on this, ask yourself something quietly. Is there a person, a conversation, or a moment from your past that you now realize carried more meaning than you were able to see at the time. Sometimes life does not place a bright marker beside the moments that matter most. Sometimes the turning points arrive softly, blending into ordinary days, waiting for you to notice them only when your awareness has grown enough to understand what was there all along. The encounters that truly reshape your path rarely appear wearing the appearance of something extraordinary. They may arrive as a familiar conversation, a simple exchange with someone you almost overlooked, or a moment that seemed no different from every other day before it. Their greatest disguise is their normal appearance. When you are searching for something dramatic, you may miss the quiet shift already happening in front of you. Think about someone standing outside waiting for a storm to know that the weather has changed. Their eyes remain fixed on dark clouds, searching for thunder, strong winds, and undeniable signs, while a small change in the air has already arrived through an open window. There is no announcement, no great display, only a subtle movement that can be felt by someone willing to pay attention before it disappears. So if the moment that matters is often hidden inside what seems ordinary, what do you need to learn to notice differently? The answer is not found by becoming more focused on everyone around you. It begins by becoming more aware of what happens inside you when something meaningful crosses your path. There are moments when your own inner world shifts slightly, a small hesitation, a sense of familiarity, a quiet feeling you cannot fully explain. And those moments may contain information you usually overlook. How many times have you met someone and felt a strange sense of recognition before you had any real reason to feel connected to them? Not because of what they told you, not because of facts you collected, but because something about that moment felt unexpectedly familiar. And how many times have you dismissed that feeling because it seemed too subtle, too quiet, too difficult to explain? This is where many people lose sight of what matters. We are often taught to trust what is obvious and question what is gentle, even though the quietest signals can sometimes reveal the deepest truths. There is a difference between simply noticing someone and truly recognizing the significance of their presence. Noticing happens quickly. Recognition asks you to slow down long enough to feel what is changing within you. For Libra, this can be especially meaningful because your natural awareness of others is often one of your greatest strengths. You may sense shifts in mood, understand unspoken emotions, and adjust yourself to create harmony without even thinking about it. But there is a hidden cost when your attention is always moving outward. You may become so skilled at reading the emotional landscape around you that you forget to check the landscape within yourself. Every time you choose to soften what you feel before allowing yourself to fully experience it, something small may become harder to recognize. Not because you have lost your sensitivity, but because you have trained it to look everywhere except inward. It is like slowly lowering the volume of a song you once loved, until one day you no longer realize how quiet it has become. So consider this: how many moments in your life that you called patience were actually moments when you were avoiding a truth that needed your attention? How many times did silence feel like wisdom when it was really a way of protecting yourself from discomfort? The difficult part is that these choices rarely announce themselves as choices while they are happening. They often feel like the most reasonable, mature, and balanced response in the moment. Only later, when you look back with greater honesty, do you notice that there was a small path before you, a choice between what felt comfortable and what felt deeply true. For Libra, the challenge is not losing your desire for harmony. It is learning that true harmony cannot exist when you have to constantly move away from your own feelings to preserve it. And if this question feels uncomfortable, perhaps it is because it has touched something within you that is ready to be seen. Recognizing a pattern within yourself can feel uncomfortable, but it is often the first moment when you begin to step out of the invisible routines that have guided you for so long. Awareness does not erase the past, and it does not ask you to criticize the choices you made when you were simply trying to protect yourself and the people around you. Instead, it gives you the ability to gently look at the hidden places where you may have been preserving peace, while slowly losing touch with your own clarity, your own desires, and your own emotional truth. For Libra, this reflection is not about becoming less caring or abandoning the natural ability to create harmony in relationships. Your sensitivity to balance is part of what allows you to understand different perspectives and bring softness into difficult situations. The deeper question is recognizing when harmony becomes something you maintain by constantly moving away from your own needs, your own instincts, or your own honest reactions. There is a difference between creating balance and endlessly reshaping yourself until you no longer recognize the person who began the journey. The purpose is not to remove your gentleness, but to help you offer that same patience and compassion toward yourself. Take a moment and allow a memory to rise naturally. It does not have to be the biggest turning point of your life or the most dramatic chapter you remember. Perhaps it was a person who entered your world quietly, a conversation that stayed with you longer than expected, or an opportunity that appeared at a time when you felt uncertain. Maybe you stepped away because the situation felt complicated. Maybe you convinced yourself that waiting was the wiser choice. Maybe you searched for a clearer sign, not realizing that the subtle feeling you pushed aside was already carrying a message worth understanding. It can feel like returning to an old photograph years later and noticing something that was always there, but somehow invisible before. A person standing just outside the center of the image. A small expression that reveals a hidden emotion, a detail you never paid attention to because your eyes were naturally drawn toward what seemed most important, most obvious, or easiest to accept. Sometimes life places meaningful moments quietly in the background, and it is only through growth that we develop the eyes to recognize their significance. And if there have been moments like that before, it is worth asking yourself, what makes you certain you are not overlooking something meaningful in the present? How many times have you told yourself that it was not the right moment to explore a connection, follow a possibility, or move towards something unfamiliar? How often have you chosen the comfort of certainty because uncertainty felt like it might disturb the balance you worked so carefully to maintain? Many of those decisions probably felt completely reasonable when they happened. They may have appeared thoughtful, responsible, and emotionally mature. You may have even believed you were simply being practical and protecting yourself from unnecessary complications. But with time and distance, a different perspective can sometimes emerge, revealing that some choices were not truly guided by clarity. They were guided by the desire to avoid the discomfort of stepping into something unknown. This is not about blaming yourself for what you did or did not choose. It is about becoming more honest with the patterns that quietly influence your life. Patterns rarely introduce themselves before repeating. They do not arrive with obvious warnings or dramatic signs. They move through familiar thoughts, familiar fears, and familiar explanations until one day you pause long enough to notice the path they have been creating beneath your feet. Perhaps there is already a specific memory appearing in your mind. A face, a place, a moment when something inside you shifted, but you quickly found a reason to dismiss it. Do not look at that memory through the lens of regret. Look at it as a reflection of your emotional rhythm, the unique way you approach closeness, uncertainty, vulnerability, and the moments when something meaningful asks you to move beyond what feels safe. Understanding this pattern gives you something deeply valuable, awareness before the next important moment arrives. It allows you to recognize the difference between your instinct for peace serving you and your instinct for peace quietly encouraging you to hide from something that deserves your attention. Not every uncomfortable feeling is a signal to leave. Sometimes it is simply an invitation to remain present long enough to understand what is unfolding. True inner balance is not created by avoiding every difficult emotion or keeping every surface perfectly calm. It is created by learning how to stay connected to yourself while those emotions move through you. Sometimes the clearest understanding does not appear when everything feels easy and predictable. Sometimes it arrives when you finally allow yourself to sit with the small inner movement you have spent so much time trying to smooth away. And perhaps this is one of the most challenging parts of the journey. The moment that changes everything may require you to loosen your attachment to the version of balance you have always known. The clarity you are searching for may not arrive as complete confidence or a peaceful answer that removes every doubt. It may first appear as a question you cannot ignore, a hesitation that keeps returning, or a quiet feeling that gently asks you to look closer before moving away. Imagine standing beside a frozen lake at the edge of winter, watching the surface that appears completely still. Beneath that layer of ice, the water has never disappeared. It has simply been hidden, waiting for the right season to move again. The first sound of cracking ice may feel unsettling, almost as if something stable is breaking apart, but it can also be the first sign that something beneath the surface is beginning to awaken. What if the discomfort you have been trying so hard to avoid is not proof that something is wrong? What if it is the beginning of recognizing something that truly matters? What if the feeling you wanted to silence is actually pointing toward a part of yourself that has been waiting to be acknowledged? For so long, you may have expected important moments to arrive as complete certainty, as a peaceful inner knowing that says, this is the right path. You may have imagined that the things meant for you would feel effortless from the very beginning. But sometimes meaningful changes begin in much quieter ways. Sometimes they arrive as a feeling you cannot immediately explain, a moment that challenges what feels familiar, or a subtle inner response that asks you to pause, listen, and pay closer attention. The moments that truly change you rarely arrive in the way you imagine they will. They do not always appear with a peaceful certainty, a perfect sense of timing, or the feeling that every piece of your life has suddenly fallen into place. Sometimes they arrive through a quiet tension you cannot immediately explain, a hesitation that rises when you stand before a person, a decision, or a path that seems to carry a meaning deeper than what you can see on the surface. It is a feeling that does not demand attention loudly, but somehow continues to return, gently asking you to look closer. You may feel the instinct to step back, to return to what feels familiar, predictable, and easier to understand. You may tell yourself that distance is wisdom, that waiting is patience, or that avoiding uncertainty is simply protecting your peace. But sometimes what feels like caution is actually a reflection of how deeply you have learned to preserve harmony around you. After all, you have spent so much of your life noticing subtle shifts in others, softening difficult moments before they become conflicts, and adjusting yourself so that the world around you feels a little more balanced. But what if that familiar reaction has another meaning? What if the discomfort you are experiencing is not always a sign that something is wrong? What if, in certain moments, it is not asking you to walk away, but inviting you to stay present long enough to understand why it appeared? Some feelings arrive not to warn you away from something, but to reveal that something important is touching a deeper part of you. The things that truly matter rarely enter your life without creating some kind of movement within you. They may not arrive with obvious signs, dramatic changes, or moments that everyone around you immediately recognizes. Instead, they create subtle shifts that only you can feel. A thought that keeps returning when you least expect it. A memory that surfaces again and again. A quiet feeling that follows you through ordinary moments, waiting until you slow down enough to finally listen. Perhaps this is one of the most difficult lessons for Libra to embrace. Balance was never meant to represent a life untouched by uncertainty. Balance is not the absence of waves. It is the ability to remain connected to yourself while the water moves around you. A calm surface does not always mean there is no movement beneath it. Sometimes the deepest changes begin quietly, beneath what others can see. There is a difference between protecting your peace and protecting yourself from every experience that asks you to grow. One allows you to remain whole. The other can slowly create a distance between you and the parts of yourself that are asking to be understood. True harmony does not come from avoiding every uncomfortable moment. It comes from learning that you can move through discomfort without losing yourself. For a long time, you may have believed that the right path would always feel calm, that meaningful choices would arrive wrapped in certainty, softness, and complete confidence. You may have expected the answer to appear like a clear reflection on still water, leaving no room for doubt. But some of the most important moments in life begin differently. They arrive as questions. They arrive as uncertainty. They arrive as a quiet inner movement that tells you something is changing before you fully understand what that change means. And perhaps that is why these moments are so easy to overlook. They do not always match the image you created of transformation. They may not feel comfortable enough to trust at first. They may ask you to step beyond the emotional landscape you have carefully maintained for years and discover that there is wisdom even inside uncertainty. If you feel that recognition within yourself now, do not rush past it. This kind of awareness is delicate. It can easily be postponed, explained away, or placed somewhere in the future with the promise that you will return to it later. But some realizations arrive with a certain quiet intensity, and they ask to be acknowledged while they are still alive, while they are still revealing something honest about who you are becoming. You do not have to choose between peace and honesty. You do not have to abandon your natural desire for harmony in order to become more truthful with yourself. The deeper form of balance is not created by keeping every surface perfectly smooth. It comes from trusting that beneath the cracks, beneath the movement, beneath the moments that challenge you, there is still something steady and real waiting to be discovered. You may never be able to predict the exact day when your life changes direction. No person, no sign, and no external symbol can offer complete certainty about what is coming or guarantee that a particular moment will transform everything. But what you can do is develop a clearer relationship with yourself, one that allows you to recognize meaning when it quietly enters your life. The ability to see clearly is not about knowing every answer before the journey begins. It is about becoming present enough to notice what your own inner world is showing you. Sometimes the most important messages do not arrive from outside of you. They appear through your own reactions, your own instincts, and the small changes in your emotional landscape that you once ignored. Libra does not need to become someone who constantly searches the horizon for approaching storms. You do not need to live in anticipation of disruption or spend your days trying to predict what might happen next. You simply need to stop giving all your energy to adjusting the outside world while forgetting to check what is happening within you. Your own reflection deserves the same patience, understanding, and attention that you have always offered to others. For so long, you may have been skilled at reading the atmosphere around you, the unspoken emotions, the hidden tensions, the needs that others struggle to express. That sensitivity is part of your strength, but your own inner voice deserves to be heard with the same care. The feelings you experience, even the confusing ones, are not obstacles to overcome. They are pieces of information guiding you toward a deeper understanding of yourself. Clarity is not found through forced harmony or through silence maintained at any cost. It does not come from convincing yourself that everything is fine before you have truly looked at what you feel. Clarity comes from the willingness to meet yourself honestly, without rushing, without fear, and without immediately trying to make every difficult emotion easier to accept. Perhaps the encounter, opportunity, or realization that changes everything has already crossed your path more than once. Perhaps it arrived disguised as an ordinary conversation, a familiar face, a simple invitation, or a moment that seemed too small to hold any lasting significance. And perhaps something meaningful is still waiting to appear in that same quiet way, not through thunder, not through a grand announcement, but through a subtle feeling that asks you to pause and notice. The difference now is not that the world outside suddenly becomes easier to understand. It is that you begin meeting the world with a clearer awareness of yourself. It is your willingness to gently clear the fog from your own inner window before deciding what exists beyond it. It is the choice to move beyond the comfortable belief that you will simply recognize everything instantly and instead embrace the deeper practice of learning how to truly see. Because sometimes recognition is not a sudden revelation. Sometimes it is a gradual opening, like morning light slowly filling a room that has been waiting for the curtains to move. Sometimes the truth you have been searching for has been quietly present all along, waiting for the moment when you are ready to meet it with greater honesty. Libra has always understood the beauty of balance. Perhaps the next lesson is discovering that balance becomes even more powerful when it is joined with clarity, because peace without awareness can become avoidance, and clarity without compassion can become harshness. The harmony you seek becomes deeper when you allow both parts to exist together, the ability to understand the world around you and the courage to truly understand yourself.